How's it going, YouTube? In today's video, we're going to be doing a counter tier list from S tier being one of the hardest counters to Xerath to D tier to where Xerath counters that champion. I'm going to go through the most common supports in the game, so if it's like a fiddle support, probably not going to make it on this list. But again, let's get into it. So just starting off, there's no particular order with these supports. I'm just going to go through all the supports and kind of give my opinion. What's the counter if we counter it or if they counter us? So Vel'Koz is actually pretty annoying early. A lot of times I tend to lose a little bit early, but you tend to hard outscale him very hard, very fast just because he has pretty close to identical range, and it's pretty much whoever catches out who first. If he lands his E, you're probably gonna die. If you land your E, he's gonna die. So it's a very coin flippy matchup. It's not too hard. Alistar is very annoying. There's only one Alistar in NA that ever gives me problems, and it's Helicopter. Laning phase is super easy, but the man just perma roams, and most Alistars just perma roam, so it's pretty hard to deal with them. But in terms of laning phase, very easy, very simple. You completely outrange him. He should never get out of range of you. The only time he ever gets in range is if he flashes, but realistically, it's not that big of a deal. Jenna, you hard counter pretty hard. She's very squishy. She is fast, so sometimes she is hard to hit. But with the new Morello's buff and anti-heal, Jenna's so easy to deal with. It's just, you just dominate this entire lane. It's the same thing with Brand. Brand, even though he has high damage, you completely outrange him. Very easy to deal with. The only time it ever becomes an issue is if he gets prio in lane and pushes you under tower. Then it becomes a little bit hard, but that goes for like every support matchup in existence. If you get pushed under tower, the lane gets kind of hard. Leona also we hard counter. I'm just not going to put it in D tier where Xerath hard counters them. I'm going to put it in C because if they do land their hook, their engage, they can straight up one shot you and the lane becomes really hard. But realistically, if you play a perfect Xerath, you counter them. It's not hard. Just dodge your E, dodge your R, and just keep poking them down so they can't engage. Maokai. So Maokai is a strange hard counter to Xerath, and the big reason is he saplings every bush. If you try to poke from outside the wave, happens the same thing, starts throwing saplings on the side. It's just all around a full AP Maokai is so annoying and so hard to deal with, and plus his new ulti with how large it is, how it takes up the entire lane. I tend to lose this matchup all the time. Even though he can be really squishy, it's just such a nuisance to deal with. Actually, we're gonna put him A. We're gonna put him A at like somewhat super hard to deal with, but like not unbearable to deal with. Amumu is really strong against you, double Q, but very easy to predict what he's doing. To see and engages, you can normally play the minion life pretty easy, but I'm going to put him above Alistar and Leona just because his ulti and team fights are giga broken. He can be very annoying. His early game damage is very high, but good positioning, you can outpoke him, deal well, like you can easily deal with him. Zillion, in laning phase, you actually hard destroy him, and you should. This champion becomes a problem in the mid game. Because of his speed buff, it's really easy for the enemy team to run at you, to catch you, and his ulti just makes it such an annoying matchup in laning phase. Really easy. He doesn't really deal much of any damage, so you can tend to outpoke him. It's just the mid to late game is where it gets really hard. Zyra, you just hard counter. It's so easy. You completely outrange her, super squishy, all around. If they pick Zyra, you pick Xerath, you're gonna win. It's as simple as that. The same thing with Soraka. Soraka used to be a little bit more annoying. Like you would straight out outpoke her. The only way Soraka in lane would be hard is if she starts landing her Q on your AD carry or you, then her healing would be kind of insane. But with the new Morello buff, Soraka is just such an easy counter. I would rush Morello first item against her, so you just hard counter her all around. Heimerdinger. One of the hardest counters to Xerath right now, for the sole reason is he guarantees prio, he guarantees pushing. If your jungler comes and gank him, it's so easy for him to turn the gank. And also, the strange thing that like makes it such a hard counter is whenever he's next to his turrets, he gets this massive move speed bonus like continuously. So it's so hard for a Xerath player to even hit the Heimerdinger to force him off. So all around the hard counter for Xerath. Rel. I'm going to put as A. Somewhat hard counter to Xerath. In laning phase, it's, I don't know, it's kind of hard between A or B. We're going to put her at A is because the laning phase is semi-easy and pretty easy to predict her engage. She has a lot of CC, but her ulti in mid-game team fights, if she's even close to you with that ultimate, she's gonna just like pull you in, and the only way to get away from it is to flash away. Seraphine, very easy to deal with. The only time it ever becomes a problem is when she gets to 2 items, but you should be able to bully her and you get early Morellos to counter Seraphine. Lux is very annoying. It's not so much like a brand Zyra, because Lux actually almost outranges you with her E, and her E does so much more damage, and her snare is longer range than your stun. So early game is really hard. If you ever get a lead against a Lux, you do kind of snowball and just take over the lane super easily, but a good Lux is actually so hard to deal with as a Xerath. Pyke is a hard counter early. The biggest thing with Pyke, if you go even, you just outscale him because you start one-shotting him at that point, but he makes it so hard to even lane properly because he just kind of runs at you, flash easy you a lot of time. So a guy like Davemon, the matchup is so hard and it's very Pyke favored in the early game. Senna, one of the lowest health pool champions. The sustain is pretty low. She's so squishy. If you land a stun, she's dead, she's gone. Get Morello's first item, and this champion's useless. Nami is somewhat of a decent counter to Xerath. With the new Morello change, Nami is going to be a little bit easier to deal with, but she's impossible to trade level 1 through 3 high damage. I almost give her an S tier. It's the same thing with Lux, where Nami does counter early, but if you ever get the slightest of lead against a Nami, you just one-shot her. Land a stun, you instantly one-shot her with your AD carry. Morgana, you hard counter. Dude, I don't even know why Morgana's a champion. Don't yell at me, comments, but I think Morgana is so useless. If you like Morgana, just play Lux. Lux is a 20,000 times better support than Morgana is. Nautilus, it comes down to really that if you dodge the hook, you're going to win this lane, but Nautilus hooks are pretty fat and large and sometimes hard to dodge and deal with. So if he gets ahead, if he lands that hook, you are dead, but realistically, good positioning and the lane isn't too bad. Lulu is a very annoying counter just because in the early game, her shields are a perfect absorption to absorb your entire combo. So a good Lulu will just block all of Xerath's damage. But if you get smart, if you land a stun, if you start swapping targets who you're gonna hit, it can be a little bit better, but still a really hard counter. Her speed buff is very annoying, and the poly, her ulti, all around just OP kit. Nico, I've seen a couple Nico supports, very easy to deal with. Just make sure you be careful being in the minion wave. You completely outrange her, outpoke. Taric is a weird counter, but I don't think he's gonna be that much of a counter anymore because of the anti-heal buffs. Because what you normally do with Taric is you go Taric, Nyla, Taric, someone with a high engaged, Tristana, stuff like that, and he has so much sustain. I'm going to put him down to the B where like it's kind of even matchup, but it can be annoying. But I think with the early anti-heal, you can deal with Taric now so much easier. Thresh, you just hard stomp, super easy. Just don't get hooked. Thresh is disgustingly squishy. If you want to play Thresh, play Nautilus. The only thing Thresh is good for is his Lantern. To me, I just feel like a win versus Thresh is like 80% of the time. Yuumi used to be an S tier counter because they would be able to sustain through Xerath poke, but they giga nerfed this champion to where I'm going to put her C tier. She's so bad now. Like, look at patch notes and she's just a garbage champ. AP Twitch, you actually hard counter. If he does get ahead, it is very hard to deal with them because he just roams. He can start one-shotting with ulti, but even if he gets ahead, you just land a stun and you can one-shot him, one combo. It's not that bad once you actually learn how to play against him. It's just learning how to ping when he's missing, learning how to counter gank where he roams, stuff like that. Sona, I'm not going to put her D tier. You're really good against her. Like, you actually smash her in lane, but if you don't get a crazy lead against her, she has so much sustain. I think with the new Morellos, it's a lot easier to deal with her, but you should be able to smash her. Rakan, very slippery, very squishy. I'm going to put him in B because a good Rakan player, I face a guy called Feather Daddy, I think his name is. He's some high challenger, Rakan one trick. It was very 50-50. I won some games, he won the others. It's just, you can cancel his jump with your E. I don't know if you know that, but he can be very slippery, very hard to hit. So I'm just gonna put him in the middle. It's kind of a skill-based matchup, I think. I put Shaco in here as a support. I haven't seen Shaco supports in a long time. He can be very annoying, but you tend to just completely outrange him. But if he ever does get a lead and if he gets behind you with AP, he can be a nuisance. Ivern's support, you tend to just run over him. The hardest part is when he gets Daisy. Karma is one of the hardest counters to Xerath, is because she completely outdamages you in the early game with her Mantra Q. It feels impossible to dodge her Mantra Q. And even if you win lane, she always goes Cerelia's and goes Mantra E and it keeps spam shielding her entire team and giving them massive move speed to where it's like impossible to hit her or her teammates. So I'm just gonna put her up in S tier as one of the hardest counters. Pantheon, he's very cheesy, very all in. If he ever gets a lead, which is pretty easy to get a lead, I know you're gonna be like, oh, you just space against him. Man, dude, they just go mobility, and with his ultimate, it's so hard to like play perfect against Pantheon. His W range is so far, and I hate that he can block your entire combo with his E. Bard, actually pretty good counter. One of the hardest Bard players I've faced. God, I forgot his name. But what he did, he actually just started W. He started W. They had so much sustain, like it didn't matter that I poked him early. They just healed through it. And they just roam and they get good tunnels behind you. And then plus at level 6 with his ultimate, it's very easy to pick out Xerath. So definitely a pretty decent counter to Xerath. But you make sure if you're playing Bard, don't leave your AD carry too much. I tend to see that happen where they just roam way too much and they just leave their AD carry to die. That's why no one likes playing with the Bard. Ashe is very kind of good against Xerath just because a lot of them go Hail Blades. They just run at you level 1 and they zone you out. It's very annoying. Again, if you land your stun, you can kill them, but it's a very like back and forth in that they go mass cooldown reduction and just spam ulti. So you have to be so careful with your positioning versus Ashes. It's not an impossible matchup, but it's just so annoying. Blitzcranks, let's go put up an A tier again. Pretty good against Xerath. If he lands his hook, you're dead. I'm putting B. It's either he lands his hook and the lane's just doomed, or he doesn't, and the lane's easy versus Blitzcranks. I've honestly like facing Blitzcranks. It's like a little mini game to me. So Braum, super easy. My guy just doesn't do anything. Your laser goes through his E, so Braum, you just smash in lane. I don't know why she's here, don't know why she's here. Is that pretty much all our supports? Well, if I missed any supports, I am sorry. We can put Swain up here. Swain's pretty easy. He's so squishy early. A lot of people think he's tanky, but it's very squishy. Galio, very easy to poke. Just make sure you're out of his E range. But if you guys enjoyed the support tier list for who counters Xerath and who do you do well against, I do hope you guys enjoyed. And make sure you leave a comment and a like down below. Goodbye.